Travelers of lonely roads, explorers of the great outdoors, workers of creepy jobs and late-night shifts. What's your scary story? I was on a backcountry hiking trip with a couple of friends. We'd been hiking for about 4 days and had spent the past day completely off trail. We were miles and miles from somewhere any casual person would be camping, and we hadn't seen a soul since we left the parking lot. Anyway, I wake up in the middle of the night to find my friend who I'm sharing a tent with just staring at me. I'm a bit creeped out, but assume that I've woken up because of him staring at me, but then from outside our tent, I hear a woman singing and realize that's what woke me up. This is completely impossible, she sounds close-ish, and we definitely would have clocked someone camping that close by. It's clearly a woman's voice and I'm the only woman on our trip, so it definitely couldn't be anyone from our group, and I've heard mountain lions that sometimes sound a bit like people, but they sound like a woman screaming, not singing. It was pretty windy that night, and it being the wind is the only slightly plausible explanation for what we heard, but again, it sounded so clearly like a human woman singing that I just can't totally convince myself it was only the wind. My friend sits up like he's going to get out of our tent and check what's up, but I just get this horrible wash of dread come over me. This feeling that if I let him leave the tent, he won't come back. I'm not afraid of the woods in any way. I've spent a lot of my life backcountry hiking and have had several run-ins with wildlife weathered bad storms with not ideal equipment, and never have I ever felt one tiny fraction of the fear I felt that night. We stayed up until dawn just huddled in our tent together freaking out. The singing lasted about an hour and then just stopped, and we didn't hear anything weird for the rest of the night. The next morning, we checked around camp and there was no sign that anyone had camped close to us and our other friends had slept through the night and didn't hear anything weird. The rest of our trip was totally normal, but I'll never forget that night. I have no explanation for it and have never known anyone who experienced anything similar. I lead a trail running group. One day we were on a run, and one of our runners said a new runner had fallen behind because she had to stop to use the restroom. We waited a bit but she never came. The trails we run are really easy to get lost on, so after a few minutes, I went to look for her while the group went ahead to our next point. I called out our specific call to her. We make a cawing bird sound. Nothing. Ran some more, called out, nothing. Finally got to a point that I should have found her. I switch to calling out her name and eventually start saying, hello? And, anybody out here? I say hello? And finally I get an answer back of hello. It's a small creepy voice maybe a 100 yards away. Sounds like a kid, but honestly, I don't know the woman at all, and maybe that's how she speaks. I ask, are you, woman's name? Voice responds again, hi. I ask, are you with my trail group's name? Voice responds, no. Right behind my fleeting ear, but of course, there's no one there. At this point, I assume there's a small child about to murder me, so I run like a scalded dog. I ran so far off course that I ended up well below our next checkpoint and had to climb up. My Strava map is amusing because you can see how far I went off trail and how high my heart rate was. When I joined the group at our checkpoint, the woman was thankfully there and I had a great story to tell. I like to think that it was just someone out on the trail messing with me, but that doesn't explain how the voice sounded so close to me. Security guard when I was about 20 years old. I patrolled several buildings in rundown area with slow businesses. One of the building was a medical treatment center, daycare-like place for seniors. I always hated walking the halls there after hours. One night I was walking and heard a piano playing, and I thought someone was playing the piano in a large communal room. I walked there and saw there was no one at the piano, and I got very spooked. As I got closer to the piano, I saw someone had left a classical radio station playing on a boombox behind the piano. I laughed it off, but something still felt odd. I went up to the second floor to check if all of the medical rooms were locked up. After checking about 4 doors, I reached out to grab the final door's handle. I pushed the handle down, and it moved more than it should have. It was clear it wasn't locked. I decided to open the door and see if I could set the lock from the inside. The moment I pushed the door to open it, something from the other side pushed back hard. My first instinct was to push harder. I don't know why, but that's what my head told me. The door opened a bit more, and then another use of force from the other side came and nearly closed the door fully. I stopped pushing the door and realized $8 an hour wasn't worth whatever was on the other side of the door. I slowly let go of the handle, backed away and walked out of the building. I locked all exits so whatever was in the building Couldn't get out without keys. No clue to this day who was there and why. I drive about 40 minutes out into the country every Saturday for band practice and am usually headed home about 1 to 2 a.m. The place we get together is not super remote, but it is all woods and farmland, and the road is basically empty that late at night. One night, I saw a set of luminous eyes right on the tree line on the opposite side of the road. I figured it was probably a deer because I see a handful of them every time I make the drive. Anyway, as soon as I saw the eyes, I started slowing down because deer are absolute idiots and will jump right into the path of your car with no warning, even if they see you coming from a long way off. As I was getting ready to pass by, I swear it looked like whatever it was stood up on its hind legs and ran into the woods. It moved quick too, like a horizontal sprint, not like big vertical hops like deer do. It took me a really long time to reconcile what I'd seen. I kept telling myself, nah dude. You were just tired. It was just a deer. But I've seen hundreds of deer and this thing was too tall. And it was too skinny to be a bear. And it moved too fast to be a person, not to mention the eyes. I still have trouble wrapping my head around what that might have been. An old job I had was located on an industrial estate in the middle of an expansive, abandoned and disused airfield. One of those places that even when the sun shone, if the estate was quiet, it was eerie. It was a small business, and because of the nature of the work, the main bulk got done in the morning, leaving the afternoons quiet and therefore only manned by 1 or 2 members of staff. On this particular day, it was just me as my colleague was out at a meeting. It was a sunshiny, normal day, and I'd been in the midst of doing very little, as you do when left to your own devices in a quiet office, when I decided to take a break to pee. Now, because of the weird layout of the building, to get to the toilets, you went downstairs, took a right at a crossroads, the front door on your left, through the, at that point, empty warehouse, and followed the loop, leaving you directly under the main office. So there I am, having a grandiose wee when I hear the front door open and close. At this point, I'm not fussed. My colleague is due back in, so it's most likely them, and if it's not, it'll be one of the drivers anyway, who quite often pop in and out. As I finish up and flush the toilet, I peer out the small window behind the loot to scout our section of the car park and just see who's arrived. Only, there's no cars but mine. That's kind of odd, and I'm a little unsettled, but I shake the feeling off by figuring it's a nice day, could just be a driver that has walked round. As I move to the sink and start washing my hands, the floorboards above my head start making the very familiar creaks and groans of somebody ascending up the stairs, and I can tell exactly where they are by the sound of which stair they're putting weight on. So somebody's definitely in and heading to the office. For some reason, the weird unsettling feeling of earlier starts coming back over me, so I finish up doubly quick time and come out of the toilets just as the main floorboard of the office creaks. I'm calling out all the time as I take the loop back around and through the warehouse. As I reach the bottom of the stairs, there's nobody on them, and as I say, all the time I've been walking, I've been calling out, figuring whoever it is would most likely stop and hang back to wait for me. But there's nobody. Now I'm really creeped out. At the foot of the stairs, I call out again, just in case they haven't heard. I was expecting somebody to poke their head around the main office door, but nobody does. There's just silence. By this point, I'm petrified. I'm on my own, in the middle of nowhere, and somebody has decided to play peekaboo in this building. With my heartbeat pounding in my ears, I take the first few steps. Alongside the stairs, there's a downstairs office and a small window that allows you to peek into the room. I check that. There's nobody in there. I carry on up, now fully on guard. At the top of the stairs, there's another crossroads. Main office on the right, conference room, with shut door, on the left. I reach the landing of the stairs, fully tensed, with my keys in between my closed fist. I turn the corner. There's nobody there. The office is empty. But I have 100% heard somebody come in and up the stairs. The door is so heavy that the sound of it opening or closing is unmistakable, plus the same for the floorboards which always give away someone's movements. All the hairs on the back of my neck stands up. The only place somebody could be is directly behind me, in the closed-door conference room, and there's no way I'm opening that. The room is massive and pitch black. I leg it downstairs just as my colleague pulls into the car park. I explain the whole thing to him, and together we brave the conference room. He pushes the door open, I hit the lights. Nobody. We scour the warehouse, even though there's no way that somebody could have got out. The shutter doors are down and locked. We check every room, everywhere. Nobody. To this day, it's the creepiest thing that I ever experienced in the building. I know what I heard. There was no way it could have been wind or heating because the floorboards make specific noises when people are on them. I'd know. I'd heard them enough times. There was no way that anybody could have gone past me, whether in the warehouse or not, as the corridor is so small. I would have seen them or heard the door click again when they left. I've got no explanation, all I know is what I heard.